Confession is not just an admission of sin, but a confrontation with the self, a truth that can either heal or destroy. Subscribe to Tears and Truth for stories that unearth the shadows we dare not speak of. The story begins. The story begins in the winter of 1987, in the quiet town of Blackwood, Vermont, where a priest's hidden journal would unravel a legacy of silence. Father Michael Callahan had always believed confession was sacred. For 20 years, he'd sat in the dimly lit booth of St. Ignatius Church, listening to whispered sins that ranged from petty theft to adultery. But nothing prepared him for the confession he heard on the night of December 12, 1987, the night his faith began to crack. The church's ancient oak pews creaked under the weight of winter frost as a hooded figure slipped into the confessional. The voice that followed was raw, trembling. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I've killed someone." The words hung in the air like poison. The man, a woman, spoke in fragments. A body buried near the old mill, blood on their hands, a secret kept for decades. When they left, they dropped a faded photograph on the floor. A child's face, circled in red. That night, Father Michael opened a leather-bound journal he'd hidden beneath his mattress. "I cannot absolve what I do not understand," he wrote, his hand shaking. "But this town, it feeds on lies. If these walls could speak, they'd scream." By dawn, he'd made a decision. He would investigate, not as a priest, but as a man. His first stop, the Blackwood Gazette archives. Dusty newspapers from the 1960s revealed a pattern. Missing persons, unsolved deaths, all tied to the town's founding families. The last entry he read made his blood freeze. Local girl 12 vanishes on her way to choir practice. Search suspended due to lack of evidence. The date? December 12, 1967. 20 years to the day that as snow buried the town. Father Michael knelt in the church, clutching rosary beads. A shadow moved in the rafters. Someone had been watching. The next morning, Father Michael visited the old mill. Its skeletal frame loomed over the frozen river, a relic of Blackwood's industrial past. He dug where the confessor had described and struck bone. A small skull, hair still clinging to it. A child. Back in his study, he cross-referenced the skull with the archived missing persons list. Maggie O'Connor. The photo from the confessional matched. But Maggie's case had been closed. The police blamed a transient. The journal entry that night was frantic. They knew. They all knew. The mayor, the sheriff, even the bishop. This town is a tomb. Days later, a new confession shattered him. Mayor Richard Hale, a pillar of the community, entered the booth. "I've protected this town from scandals that would ruin us," he said, voice steely. "Even when it meant burying the weak. You do the same, Father." When pressed, Hale hissed, "Ask your predecessor what happens to priests who pry." Father Michael discovered that Father Joseph Greer, St. Ignatius's priest before him, had died suddenly in 1967. The official record, a heart attack. But the church's basement held a clue, a box of Greer's belongings, marked, "Do not open." Inside, a letter. "They threatened my niece if I spoke. God forgive me, I stayed silent. But the truth is here. Follow the crosses." That evening, the church bells rang on their own. In the cemetery, 7 graves bore small, unmarked crosses. The first body he exhumed wasn't Maggie's. It was another child. Father Michael's hands trembled as he brushed dirt from the second child's remains. The skeletal frame was petite, clad in tattered remnants of a blue dress. A rusted locket around its neck held a photo of a smiling family. The Hales. Mayor Richard Hale's face stared back, decades younger, beside a woman and 2 children. One was a boy now grown. The other, a girl who matched the description of another missing child from 1972. Emily Walsh. The priest's journal entry that night was a storm of ink. They're not random victims. They're sacrifices. But for what? He returned to the church basement, where Father Greer's box held more horrors. A map of Blackwood with 7 marked graves and a faded pamphlet for a secret society, the Brotherhood of the Crimson Cross. Founded in 1867, its members included every mayor, sheriff, and bishop in Blackwood's history. Their motto, "Blood binds the faithful." A knock shattered the silence. Mrs. Donovan, the elderly church secretary, stood at his door, her face ashen. "You shouldn't be digging up the past, Father," she whispered, pressing a key into his hand. "The old chapel outside town. What they do there, it's not God's work." Before he could ask, she fled into the snow. The abandoned chapel, hidden deep in the woods, was a grotesque parody of holiness. Inside, pews faced an altar stained black. Symbols were carved into the walls. Eyes, crosses, and a phrase repeated in Latin. Sanguis pueri, sanguis patri. The blood of children, the blood of the nation. Behind the altar, a locked door opened with Mrs. Donovan's key. The room beyond was a shrine. Photographs of missing children, dates spanning 120 years, and a ledger detailing offerings to ensure Blackwood's prosperity. The last entry, December 12, 1987. Subject, TBD. That night, Father Michael confronted Mayor Hale at his mansion. The man laughed, sipping bourbon by a roaring fire. "You think we're monsters? We're saviors. 1 life every 20 years to keep this town from crumbling. Blights averted, storms turned, fortunes kept. Even God makes bargains." When Father Michael brandished the ledger, Hale's smile vanished. "You'll hang yourself with that righteous anger, or your sister will." The threat struck like a blade. Father Michael had never spoken of his sister, Claire, who lived in Boston. Hale's men had been watching. Back at the church, he found his office ransacked. The journal and ledger were gone. Scrawled in red on the wall, "Confess or she dies." Father Michael stared at the blood-red threat staining his office wall. The cold seeped into his bones, but it was the fear for Claire that paralyzed him. He'd kept her existence hidden for years, a promise made after their parents died. Protect her from the world, his mother had gasped on her deathbed. Now, the Brotherhood had found her that he fled to Boston in the dead of night, driving a borrowed pickup truck through blizzards that felt like divine wrath. Claire's apartment was a 3rd-floor walk-up in a crumbling neighborhood. When she opened the door, relief turned to terror. "Michael? What's wrong?" He shoved a bag into her hands. "We need to leave. Now." But the Brotherhood was faster. A black sedan screeched to a halt outside. 2 men emerged, faces masked, guns glinting. Father Michael dragged Claire down the fire escape as bullets peppered the bricks. They ran, breathless, through alleys slick with ice, until they ducked into a 24-hour diner. Claire's hands shook around a coffee mug. "Who are these people? What did you do?" He told her everything, the confessions, the graves, the ledger. Her tears fell hot and furious. "You think you're saving me? They'll never stop. They'll kill us both." Back in Blackwood, the church burned. Flames engulfed St. Ignatius's steeple, lighting the night sky like a hellish beacon. Firefighters found Father Greer's box in the ashes, its contents mostly destroyed, except for a single scorched page. A list of names, every child sacrificed since 1867. Beside each, a parent's signature. They'd willingly given their children. The revelation gutted Father Michael. "Why?" he demanded at the mayor's office the next morning. Hale smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "You think we stole them? These families begged us to take their sick, their weak, their bastard children. In return, we gave them wealth, health, miracles. Even your precious Father Greer signed his niece away." Check the 1967 entry. The name hit like a thunderclap. Eleanor Greer, age 12. Signed by Joseph Greer. The priest's journal entry that night was a single line. There are no innocents here. But Claire refused to relent. The children were innocent, she argued, hacking into Hale's private server from a motel room. Files spilled across the screen, bank transfers, medical cover-ups. A video from 1967. Father Greer weeping, handing a girl to hooded figures. Take her. Just make it quick. Claire froze the frame. Eleanor wasn't his niece. She was his daughter. The next confession broke Father Michael entirely. A woman crept into the motel room at dawn. Mrs. Donovan, the church secretary. Her confession spilled out in rasps. I was Eleanor's mother, Greer's mistress. After they took her, he made me swear silence, or they'd kill my grandson. She pressed a flash drive into his hand. It's all there. The rituals, the lies. Stop them before December 12th. The drive contained footage of the Brotherhood's ceremony. Children drugged, collared like lambs, led to the old chapel. A chant echoed, Sanguis pueri, sanguis patri. Then a blade. But the final file was worse. A live feed of Mayor Hale in a blood-stained robe, standing over a bound girl. The date stamp, December 11th, 9 p.m. tomorrow night. Claire gripped her brother's arm. We have to go back. Blackwood welcomed them with a blizzard. The town square was eerily empty. Every shop boarded up. At the church ruins, a note waited. Midnight. Come alone or the girl dies on camera. Father Michael knelt in the ash, rosary in hand, and made his own confession to Claire. I'm going to give them what they want. Me. She slapped him. You don't get to martyr yourself. We fight. But as midnight neared, he slipped away, leaving Claire locked in the truck. The chapel's doors stood open, candlelight bleeding into the snow. Inside, the Brotherhood waited, hooded and silent. The girl, a redhead, no older than 10, struggled against her binds. Mayor Hale stepped forward, a dagger in his hand. Kneel, Father. Your death will buy her life, and your sister's. Father Michael knelt. The dagger rose. Then, tires screeched. Claire crashed through the chapel doors, a Molotov cocktail in each hand. Let him go, or I burn this cult to the ground. Chaos erupted. Flames climbed the walls. The Brotherhood scattered, howling, as Claire freed the girl. Father Michael seized Hale, slamming him onto the altar. Where are the others? The children? The mayor spat blood. Gone. You'll never find them. The pact always survives. Outside, sirens wailed. But it wasn't the police. It was the townsfolk, armed with rifles and axes, their eyes hollow with fury. They surrounded the chapel, chanting the Brotherhood's motto. Blood binds the faithful. The chapel burned like a pagan pyre, flames clawing at the sky as the townsfolk advanced. Their faces twisted into a grotesque mosaic of fear and fervor. Father Michael stood between Claire and the mob, the dagger still clutched in Mayor Hale's limp hand. Blood dripped from the mayor's temple where Claire had struck him, a shallow victory. You think fire will cleanse this? A woman shrieked from the crowd, her voice raw with decades of complicity. We are Blackwood. We endure. Claire tightened her grip on the girl, Lily, whose whimpers echoed the priest's crumbling faith. Father Michael raised the flash drive, its silver edge catching the inferno's glow. It's over. The world will see what you've done. The mob hesitated, a crack in their resolve. But Hale stirred, laughing through broken teeth. And who'll believe a dead priest and a runaway? The police? The press? They're ours too. The diary's final confession in the chaos. Father Michael remembered the journal, buried under ash and guilt in the church ruins. He lunged for Hale's coat, retrieving a lighter engraved with the Brotherhood's crest. Claire, the mill, he shouted. There's proof there, the ledger, the bones. Go. She hesitated, tears cutting through soot. I won't leave you. You have to, he pleaded, pressing the flash drive into her palm. Get Lily out. Live. As Claire fled with the girl, Father Michael turned to the mob, his cassock billowing like a shroud. You want blood? Take mine. He flicked the lighter, igniting the diary's pages. Words written in torment curled into smoke. God forgive me. I see now. Some sins cannot be absolved. The crowd recoiled as he hurled the burning journal into the chapel's heart. Flames erupted, consuming the altar, the ledger, and Hale's smug grin. The mayor screamed, robes ablaze, as the roof collapsed. Echoes in the ashes Claire reached the mill, where news vans and state police swarmed. The flash drive's footage, Hale's rituals, the signed confessions, blared on a reporter's laptop. By dawn, Blackwood trended nationwide. But in the woods, Claire found Michael's body by the river, half frozen, the locket of Emily Walsh in his hand. His final journal entry, scrawled on a scrap of psalm paper. I confess tonight, not to God, but to the devil we made. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they've become. But Claire, tell them all. Epilogue. Whispers in the snow 1 year later. Claire stood at Blackwood's border, Lily beside her. The town lay empty, its streets choked with weeds, its secrets exhumed by FBI diggers. 7 graves had been moved, 7 names etched into a new memorial. Innocent, remembered. But as Claire turned to leave, a shadow crossed the road. A hooded figure, clutching a leather-bound journal. The pact survives, it whispered, vanishing into the pines.